when I was getting a publisher for my book, because I wanted it professionally published, I wanted it textbook quality. I self-published Perfect Foot because, you know, it's cute, but like I really wanted this to be a true guide. I had the hardest time finding a publisher because everybody was like, oh, but we want cutting edge treatment for OCD. You know, everybody wants these little silos. I believe that mental illness and mental health, I think of it like ice cream. I think there's one base and I think there's many flavors. And I think what will help one thing will help everything, but it won't be the same for everybody. That's where we have to trust our values. We have to ask ourselves what our beliefs are, what we gravitate towards. Some people are very comfortable with medication and, you know, some people are like, absolutely not. It has to be natural, it has to be supplements. Like, you don't have to change your belief system, but what will help something will help everything. It really will. It has to do with family, it has to do with therapy, it has to do maybe with balancing hormones or chemicals, changing the environment. But so when we're talking about anxiety and what to do to regulate that, we're talking about depression, okay? We're talking about other, probably not the serious mental illnesses. For that, I really do think medication is the only thing that really works for those things. But everything else, I think that, you know, regulating the central nervous system, whether you need to upregulate a depression or downregulate an anxiety, it's the same, okay? So anxiety is our biology that expresses itself through our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions. It's what's going on inside that's coming out on the playing field of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors, okay? So Courtney was having a really bad day today. She was very dysregulated, and she's going on with this narrative. I can't go to work today. I'm too stressed, I'm too stressed. I'm like, okay. That was her anxiety that was coming out through her thoughts and her emotions, and then her behavior's like, I'm not going to work. I'm like, you're effing going to work, okay? Like, you've been at this too long, and she teaches yoga to little kids at a library. I'm like, honey, go teach your yoga. It's gonna, like, no. But she was all, and the thing is that we believe our narratives. We believe, oh, I'm depressed because this happened. Okay, maybe that's a catalyst, but we have to look at the depression. We have to look at what's going on. We have to regulate ourselves. We can't like listen to the narrative so much. Maybe that's harsh. Okay, I'm like a solution-oriented therapist. So anxiety is stress coming out in the body in different ways. All right. Now here comes the question: is it hardwire or is it software-based? Is it like nature or nurture? Okay, where does it come from? It comes from both, right? It comes from our genetics. There is research that shows that trauma is a multi-generational thing that passes down, like Holocaust stuff, you know, is found in DNA of like adoptees and stuff, like that kind of trauma. So it can be hardwired, it can be software-based, it can be learned, you know. When the going gets tough, I clean, you know, where did I learn that? So, you know, it comes from both places, and we have to sort of work with the whole ball of wax. So if you look at anxiety in the family that you come from, let's start with anxiety. We could think about this also with depression, but like, who can relate to anxiety? Who has had anxiety here? Okay, universal, we can relate. Where do you think your anxiety came from? Childhood trauma sometimes, yeah. Mm-hmm. We all PTSD at work, yes. My mother. And meaning my mother what? Like, did she do it to you, or was she just having it?
She always, she was always, yeah. Well, she's the cleaner, like you said. She's always finding something and just like sit down.
Yeah. So everybody does the best they can, okay? And every kid is going to get the raw deal of childhood. No matter what we do, no matter how hard we try, every kid's going to get their raw deal of childhood, as we did, okay? Every parent does the best they can. Nobody's out there trying to hurt their kid, all right? But we learn things. And whether we got it from our DNA, whether we got it from our learned kind of environment, whose responsibility is it to deal with and manage at the end of the day? Ours. Our children have it. Whose anxiety, yes, that's a pun, whose responsibility is it to help them manage it as properly as we possibly can? Ours. Okay, let's add another caveat. We have a certain style. Our spouse or partner might have a different style. Oh, now now what do we do? We're going to get into that a little bit. So it's interesting and it's a little complicated, but at the end of the day, it's not so complicated. All right, but here's something to really think about. If we are not conscious, if we are not open, if we don't say, hey, I stress out over this and I behave in this way when I'm stressed and I can do something about it, if I don't own that, in is out. What's going on is what's coming out. It's going to be transmitted to the next generation. Okay, so it's up to us to sort of do something about it and like stop the process. We can stop the process in our generation. I believe we can. All right? So when we understand our programs, we can respond more intentionally. Okay, who knows what the vagus nerve is? Who has heard of polyvagal theory or the vagus nerve? Oh, I'm so excited. Our acupuncturist has. And what do you, and don't feel on the spot. Do you work with these meridians?
I work with the channels, yes.
Mm-hmm. Is it effective?
Yes, I work
Yes.
with anxiety all the time.
Yes.
And I also agree with you that anxiety, and I'm not talking about clinical depression, but
Yeah.
can you say regular depression? But
Yeah.
regular depression and anxiety are two
Heads and tails of the same coin. Huh.
That's
Yes.
why I tell my patients that.
Nobody knows that. Because if somebody suffers from anxiety, they're probably going to have a bit of a depressive episode at some point. It pings back and forth. It is heads and tails. And I believe that's a regulation issue, a systemic regulation issue that is hardwired, that is learned, that we repeat, and that becomes who we are.
Right, sometimes you can sort of cut through, stop an anxiety attack. Certainly a mild one, like I get people start going to anxiety on the table, they come in and they start like ramping themselves up.
Right.
And I could do something, and I'm sure you know this, I'm sure a lot of people here know this, you know, you do the breathing, you do, I give them box breathing, or, you know, just envisioning, you know.
We're going to do this stuff today. And what you're teaching them to do is self-regulate and get out of the, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And okay, I'm here. I can do something. I'm in charge. I'm in control. I'm not going to die. I'm okay. No, because what is a panic attack? A panic attack is really somebody feeling like they are going to die. How many people that wind up in the ER with panic? It's terrible. It's an awful feeling. And then what's agoraphobia? I can't leave the house because God forbid this happens to me out there when I'm driving. What am I going to do? It's a real thing. So, and I don't mean to minimize. I think that sometimes, you know, we minimize the pain of these oh, it's just ADD. No, you know what, somebody that struggles with ADD, that's a struggle. We can't minimize because we kind of are using language. But we can be effective. We can work with it.
Suicide who have severe ADD.
I know. I know.
Their meds for a while.
I know. Right. So the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, and the more we pick up tools and do something about it, I think the better we're going to be as a society. But the vagus nerve, this is so cool. So the vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the human body. It starts at the 10th cranium. It goes down the spinal column. It looks like seaweed. If anybody's ever heard of tapping, okay, these tapping points, these meridian points are going right on the vagus nerve. It goes down the face. It goes down the spinal column. It breaks off at the hips, and it goes down the legs, okay? From the waist down, it is non-myelinated. Does anybody know what myelination is? Myelination is when you wrap a wire in copper and things fly. It transmits, in this case, electrical impulse fast when it's myelinated, and when it's non-myelinated, it goes real slow. So they're starting to be able to identify anxiety and depression as a vagus nerve issue, and if it's activated on the lower part of the vagus nerve, it's more depression, that leaden legs syndrome, that stuck energy. And if it's high up, it's moving fast, it's anxiety. We're going to go into patterns of how this can manifest in the body. But when you think about it, really is neurobiology. This vagus nerve is real. Think of it as like a tuning fork, bong, with stress, and now it's vibrating a certain way. And we don't even know this is going on inside of us. But when we start to look at it this way, we can start to work with that. We can slow it down. We can speed it up. We can like do things. It's very cool. Okay, so fight, flight, or freeze. This is a pattern, and it's a habituated pattern, and it's from the vagus nerve. So fight is high up, and closer to the head. It's myelinated, it's fast, it's energetic, it's powerful. Flight is run away, it's lower, probably in this section of the vagus nerve. It's like, get me out of here. And freeze is, I'm stuck, I cannot move. People say fawn, that's like trying to make things better with other people, but that's not an initial response. That's like a secondary response. So fight, flight, freeze are vagal response patterns to stress and anxiety. So I'm going to ask the question here. First of all, there's no better and no worse response pattern. They all have their fringe benefits and their challenges. How many people, I'm going to go to the next slide and then we're going to do this together. All right. So I'm going to describe what a vagal fight, flight, freeze pattern looks like. I'm going to ask you to think about what your initial response pattern is. Okay, so fight would be anger, road rage, yelling, conflict, meltdown, okay? Run away, flight is avoiding a situation. There tends to be a lot of shame involved. People that have this pattern tend to run scenarios in their mind. Okay, if I do this, this is going to happen. If I say this, in the flight pattern, people tend to create scenarios. Okay, I'm going to do this, and he says that. If she says that, then I can do this, like in the head. Okay, OCD tends to fall in this. Okay, if I control this, if I make this, okay, I can be safe. It's a flight pattern. It's an escape kind of mechanism. And then there's freeze. That's more depression, procrastination, kind of bizzing out on the screen. And I'm not talking about like what we all do. Okay, let's like look at the recipes. Oh, I happen to like the balance beam. Watching gymnastics on the balance beam is very calming for me, okay? I don't know that I'm freezing, I'm kind of like decompressing there, but if somebody is really like bizzing out, really screen obsessed, it could be a freeze pattern. So, first reaction to high stress. Something happens, jangles your nerves, bangs the tuning fork of your vagus nerve. How many fighters are here? Okay, how many run away? Flight people, flight risk. How many people freeze? Okay, did you notice, this is so typical, you guys are great, it's very evenly divided. It's really, every group I ever do, it's a third, it's a third, it's a third. I think it's very interesting, yeah.
But I feel like I exhibit some of the combinations, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what
So
probably...
I for fight and run away, but I feel like there's a bit of freeze at times too.
Usually we have a primary default, and then if that doesn't work, we go to a secondary. So I'm a fighter, okay? I was a screaming, yelling mom. Why do you clean your room? No, I have to open the mail, I was like that, okay? And if that didn't work, I'd go sulk. I'd go, nobody loves me. All the work I do, don't you know what I do for you? But there's usually a primary, okay? Now, think about this. Yes? Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's a difference with how I am with my kids versus how I am in the rest of my life.
Right. Okay. So the rest of your life, the rest of our life, we are probably better, more regulated than we are in our most intimate relationships. So with our spouses, with our kids, we are going to go to the worst case scenario because nothing jangles our nerves more than that. So when you're doing this, this is what I would call at your relational worst. I'm gonna get it. I gotta get a tissue here. Sorry.
I'm screaming and hollering. I'm a fighter.
Yep. So think about it at your relational worst, not at your functional best. Okay? My functional best is when I'm doing therapy. I say to my kids, people pay me to tell them what to do. Why are you not listening to me? And they're like, if they knew what you did, they would never come to see you. and it's true, okay? So at our relational worst, what is the pattern, okay? Okay, all right. Wait, maybe we should do this again. I qualified it poorly.
I feel like it's different short term and long term. Like short term, I'm total from the bottom,
Yeah.
but overall, it's avoided. It's like I keep super busy to just avoid.
Yeah. So that is a strategy and more of a personality trait, whereas the flash point of high stress and anxiety is when the vagus nerve gets hit, and that's when we need to regulate the most, okay? It's good to know where we are because we can take responsibility, and I'm going to take you down a path of like setting some goals. Now let's add in, what about the response pattern of our children? What about the response pattern of our spouses? So I'm a fighter. My ex-husband was a freezer. I'd be screaming at him on the couch. He'd be like freezing me out. Like, where was that going? Okay, no wonder we probably didn't make it after 26 years. I mean, sad to say, but okay. What helped me reduce my screaming and my fighting? The love of my children. I've got Courtney's a gentle soul. I could not behave that way. I'd cream her. I had to really restrain myself. And so I've worked this. I've done this work, okay? I really believe in this work. Yeah.
So what if the person that you're closest with, like I'm a fighter, my sister's a runaway, and we bang heads all the time. So how do you work that?
You regulate, as I'm going to teach you how, and you practice, and you try and come from love. Because there's something called an objectivity battle that happens in dyads, okay? Couples, siblings, you know, intimate relationships, where here's an objectivity battle. You were rude to that waiter. No, I wasn't. My food was cold. I just sent it back. You were rude. No, I wasn't. Whose objective reality is real? It doesn't matter at that point. If we're going to be relational, we have to like tone our vagus nerve. We have to come out of that conditioned pattern, and we have to realize that objective reality cannot trump personal connection and relationship unless it's the most important of the important, which we think everything is the most important of the important, but it's generally not. So we have to be relational. That's a whole nother workshop that I'd like to do, because I'm a relational therapist, and that is very different than being an individual therapist. 80s, 90s was all about me, okay? But I think where it's at is we, and how do we be relational? And I think learning our response patterns, toning our response patterns, and changing our dynamics is transformative. It will change our relationships. Okay, so look at this. This is so cool. So when we are dysregulated, look at the top diagram, okay? That is our brain-heart pattern is incoherent. This is called incoherence. This is from Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. If anybody's heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's incredible. And he talks about this stuff a lot. But this is what's going on for us. Okay, the vagus nerve gets hit. It's not just in our heads, it's in our biology, and we're kind of like, meh. Okay, and the goal is to get to a place of coherence or regulation, where the brain waves and the heart rate waves are flowing smooth.